All right. I think we can go ahead and get started here. Welcome to the InTouch Unique Features presentation. My name is Mary Alice Amaral. I'm a pre-sales consultant with AVEVA, and I primarily focus on our HMI SCADA solutions. And so today, for this next hour here, so earlier this year, back in August, we had our AVEVA ENABLE event where this was an event for our partners, our system integrators, to come and learn more about the updates and new information that we are doing with AVEVA. And so one of the sessions that we had around InTouch was a hands-on lab session. So that was a 2-hour deep dive into a lot of the new features that we're highlighting with InTouch. And so obviously today we don't have the time to do a 2-hour hands-on lab session. So what I am going to do is kind of walk you guys through what we did as part of that session and really highlight a lot of the new features that we're promoting as part of our InTouch. So as probably a lot of you know, InTouch has been around for 30 years, over 30 years, and throughout that time, there's been a lot of updates and new features added into the product. And you know, I think at AVEVA at least, we hear a lot of feedback from customers, from people who are, you know, familiar with InTouch, Wonderware, is that, you know, they think that InTouch is old, it's outdated, that AVEVA's not really investing much in InTouch, and you know, that's really not the case at all. And you'll see that kind of as we go through the presentation today, is that AVEVA really is committed to making investments and continuing to improve InTouch. And you know, here you're able to see kind of an overview of a lot of the updates that have been made to InTouch, you know, starting back here with the 2017 release, going all up through the kind of the most recent release of InTouch. And so, you know, the last release that we had was our 2023 R2 release of InTouch, and we'll dive into a lot of these features throughout the presentation in the next couple of minutes here, but just kind of want to kind of briefly touch on a couple of these ones here, which are, you know, first, the ability to import SVG graphics. This really helps with extending the visualization capabilities within InTouch in the web client. The ability to do user-defined types, so UDTs. So now you have more of a hierarchy within InTouch instead of the kind of flat tag name dictionary that is in the older versions of InTouch. And then also, you know, added the ability to connect directly to an OPC UA server and drag and drop tags directly into the InTouch application, automatically have those tags mapped to the OPC UA endpoint and have those as part of your InTouch application. A couple of things that I wanted to touch on before we really deep dive into a lot of the new features is we have something online called AVEVA Learning Bites. These are very short, kind of 5 to 10 minute long videos that really dive into a lot of the different products that we offer as part of AVEVA. So we have a dedicated Learning Bites specifically for InTouch, where you can go and say, how do I historize a tag? How do I create a UDT? So these are really useful. They're very short, so that makes it kind of nice to go through quickly. So you can either scan that QR code or just do a Google search of AVEVA Learning Bites, and it will take you to that, and you can kind of filter down based on the product that you're looking for. We also have our InTouch site that you can go to learn more about InTouch, and you're able to download the software directly from this site as well. We also have docs.aveva.com. So this is really useful because this is all of the documentation that comes with the software products installation. And so now these are all available now online. So you know, we have all of those InTouch install files. You can just go to docs.aveva.com and you know, filter and search for the InTouch documentation and have it available to you there. And then another really great resource that we have available is our Heroes HQ. So this is kind of a user community where people can interact, ask questions, get feedback from other customers, from our product managers, from the technical team at AVEVA, and it has a great, you know, a lot of great resources available there. So you can sign up, create an account at this website here today. All right, so wanted to kind of briefly touch on a couple of the updates with the 2026 release. So one of the improvements, well, actually before I get there, moving forward with InTouch, our focus for the new releases is primarily going to be around standalone InTouch and InTouch Unlimited. So for people who have InTouch for system platform, this will still be maintained, but they're not going to necessarily be new features that are added for InTouch for system platform. And the reason for that is because OMI is the preferred visualization client for system platform. And so that's why the focus will primarily be around InTouch standalone. And so, kind of the updates that I'm going to primarily focus on for the 2026 release are more around kind of the redundancy capabilities within InTouch. So, these are subject to change, but, one of the things that we're, adding to this new release is the ability to do redundancy, historical redundancy. And so what this will allow me to do is, from my InTouch node, have a primary and a backup historian that I'm logging my data to. And so what this will then do is, if that primary historian goes down, it can fail over to that partner historian, and so we can make sure that we're preserving the data that way. The other kind of redundancy enhancement that we're introducing within the 2026 release is around alarm redundancy. So right now, when alarms from two InTouch nodes are being sent to the AVEVA historian, those alarms are being duplicated within the historian. And so we're making updates to the alarm hot backup manager. So that way, when we have two InTouch nodes, primary and backup, that are logging alarms to the AVEVA historian, there will no longer be the duplicate alarm data in the historian. All right, so now, kind of want to deep dive into some things that you may not know about InTouch. The first is that we actually have a free version of InTouch, and this is really, really great for new users, people who are just getting started with InTouch. Maybe you want to play around with it, familiarize yourselves with it. So directly from the AVEVA website, you can actually download InTouch, and you don't need a license for up to 64 tags. And when you install this free version of InTouch, it also comes with our introductory demo. The introductory demo is really nice because it's updated with each new release of InTouch, and it has a What's New button as part of the demo, where you can go back all the way to the 2014 release of InTouch and see kind of a bulleted list of all of the improvements that were made within each version. And so this is kind of a brief video of that introductory demo here, and really what we're kind of highlighting are different visualization screens, trends, capabilities that we can utilize as part of an InTouch applications, things like a map application with KPI details, different process screens, things like, for a water plant, maybe for a bottling line, different dashboarding capabilities. So even being able to utilize some even more advanced visualization capabilities for alarming, trending, we can have all of that as part of, an InTouch application, be able to acknowledge alarms from InTouch as well. So the next update that we have is we have a new WindowMaker, kind of a more updated user interface for the WindowMaker and the application manager. The reason for this update was AVEVA came up with these new AVEVA design standards, and the reason for that is because we wanted to have a little bit more consistency and more of a uniform kind of look and feel between the AVEVA products. Especially, for customers who are using multiple AVEVA products, we wanted to have kind of a, similar look and feel for that. So, within WindowMaker, you can kind of see that updated look and feel. One of the things that we added is a backstage to WindowMaker. So this backstage is where a lot of the configuration is done. Things like being able to configure, the security, historical logging. If you want to, directly log to the historian, that's done in the backstage. Importing, exporting, that can all that configuration stuff can now be done within that backstage part of WindowMaker. And then, same kind of, information that you saw maybe in previous versions where you have kind of the ribbon across the top, the tag name dictionary, the different tiles across the top, other tools for, building out your application, and, even being able to do like a dark mode, for example, if you wanted to, go between dark and light, you can kind of set that based on what your preference is. We also have unlimited tags in InTouch now. So this requirement actually started because there was a request of being able to support 100,000 tags as well as having a longer tag name. Later that requirement came to 300,000 tags and then unlimited. So in our kind of documentation that we have, we've specified that we've only tested up to 300,000 tags and that new unlimited tag count license is, it's unlimited, but kind of the internal limit is 900,000 tags. And then as part of that, we've also extended the tag names as well. So another new feature is, and I kind of briefly mentioned this earlier, is we now have the ability to connect to an OPC UA server, and from that OPC UA server within WindowMaker, we can drag and drop tags and add them to our tag name dictionary from the OPC UA server. So, instead of having to create, tag by tag and, enter in the access name, all the information for setting up that tag, you can now just drag and drop if you have tags coming from an OPC UA server, and they're automatically tied to that OPC UA server. So one of the things the way that we demonstrated this at that workshop that we had earlier this year is we had kind of a simulation running where we had a couple of different reactors, and we, in the back end, in the OCMC, which was previously the SMC, we connected to the OPC UA server, and then within WindowMaker, we were able to then connect, drag and drop the tags. I'm going to talk about UDTs here shortly in a little bit, and one of the things with this current capability right now is when you do import from an OPC UA server, it does kind of, those tags are imported as in the tag name dictionary, so more of that kind of flat hierarchy. But there are going to be, improvements to this in the future to, ultimately be able to leverage some of the UDT capabilities with this as well. So basically, we've connected to that OPC UA server. We can pick and choose or even select all the tags, based on whatever the hierarchy here is, drag and drop, and we can now see those tags created within our tag name dictionary here. So speaking a little bit about UDTs, user-defined types, basically what this allows us to do is have more of a hierarchy for our tags within our InTouch application. So if you kind of think about a traditional InTouch application, you probably think about the tag name dictionary where, again, it's more of that flat structure. UDTs now allow us to have more of an object-oriented model where we might have a data type and then we have members to that data type to actually represent our plant, kind of the assets that we have within our plant. And so, as part of this, for example, this way. So, we might have our batch plant, which we can see here, and as part of our batch plant, we have a couple of different pieces of equipment. We have a conveyor, we have a mixer, and within each of those pieces of equipment, there are a couple of things that we're measuring, our tags, really. So we can create a hierarchy for those tags and create that structure, so kind of that template, and then be able to create instances of that plant based on, our UDT structure. Another thing that's nice about UDTs is they can support relative referencing for owning objects for industrial graphics. So what this means is that basically for an owning object within InTouch, that can be directed to a UDT. And so what this means is then maybe I have this graphic that's representing my batch plant. I can design this kind of graphic, this window one time, and then update that owning object during runtime to point to the batch plant that I'm looking with. So now I can, reuse that graphic, define that graphic one time, point to a UDT, and then update the information as part of that graphic. So what we did for the lab session here is, again, we had that kind of reactor simulation that we created, and within our so I mentioned earlier, right now the current capability when we connect to an OPC UA server is it's imported as a tag name dictionary. But one of the things that we wanted to demonstrate as part of this lab is you can kind of optimize how you create your UDTs to align with the structure for the OPC UA server tags. So for example, in our simulation, we had our reactor 1 dot, pump dot set point. And so when I create a UDT, that I can check the box to say use tag name as item name, which will then create that kind of dot delimited structure that aligns with that same structure that I have from my OPC UA server. And so what we did as part of this lab is, I kind of structured the UDTs based on the model, kind of the structure that I had from my OPC UA server. So then when I created this structure, all I had to do was click use the tag name as the item name, and then it was directly linked to my OPC UA simulation. So, like I said earlier, the OPC UA connecting to it is those tags are created as part of kind of the flat tag name dictionary, but there are ways to kind of work around that and optimize how you create your UDTs to work with the data that you're pulling in here. So basically what we did is we created a couple different reactors. With the UDTs, you can also export them into a JSON file if you want to make any edits and then re-import that JSON file back into the UDTs. So what we did here is I created a reactor 1, a reactor 2, exported that to a JSON file, and then just in that JSON file changed it. Reactor 1 is reactor 3, reactor 2 is reactor 4, and then I imported that back into the UDT. So I already have my reactor 1 and 2 created, and then you can just create instances, or you can create the multiple reactors, or if you want to make any changes, you can export that, make the changes, re-import it, and update that information. So one of the other things that we can do within kind of the visualization side of things is in the industrial graphic editor, there's a tab called model tag name. And in this model tag name tab on the right here, this can either be from a UDT or from the tag name dictionary. You can drag and drop that tag onto the screen and then select which type of visualization you want to associate with that tag. So when you do that, you can say, hey, I want a rectangle with a percent fill, and that animation is automatically tied to that graphic, and that tag is automatically associated with that visualization that you've selected there. So I can do a value display. You can add an industrial graphic. And so this makes it a lot easier and a lot more efficient when building out your visualization, is just being able to drag and drop. You don't have to worry about, did I type, if you have a long tag name, you don't want to make a typo or anything like that. And so, it's automatically associated that way. So you can kind of see that in the runtime here, where all 3 of these graphics that we added here, all different animations, all different graphics, but, those tag names were associated with it. So we can also more easily historize data from InTouch to the AVEVA historian. So, previously the way that you set up data from InTouch to historize to the AVEVA historian is you had to import the tags to the historian. And so if there was something new that was added to WindowMaker, you then needed to, update and add that information to the historian as well. In the newer versions of InTouch, we added something called HCAL, Historian Client Access Layer. And what this means is that in those newer versions of InTouch, we can actually just check a box that will then enable storage from InTouch directly to the AVEVA historian. And so, in that backstage where a lot of that configuration is done, there's a historical logging page here where we can click and just check enable storage to the historian, check that box, save it, and now we have our data that's from InTouch being historized to the AVEVA historian, and we can trend that within our window, or within window viewer here, and see that that data is being trended. So another feature that I kind of briefly mentioned earlier is the ability to import SVG graphics into the industrial graphic library. So I don't know about you guys, but I'm not very good at creating very pretty, nice looking graphics. And so this is really nice because, you know, maybe you have a design person who is really talented and good at making graphics that look very nice, and you want to utilize those as part of your InTouch application. They could create that as like an SVG graphic, maybe in Adobe XD or something like that, and then you can import that into your industrial graphic editor. And then all of those components of that SVG graphic will come in separately that you can then animate. You can tie tags to those graphics and make it work within your InTouch application. One thing that's kind of cool that I learned about recently is there's a AI tool online called Figma. Have you guys heard of Figma? Yeah, so for people who don't know, you can say, hey, design me this screen, have it save it as an SVG graphic, and then import it into your InTouch application. And so you can have a design person or Figma do that for you. So make sure this is playing. So, you know, one of the things, so basically what we have here is, you know, we're seeing how we're able to import an SVG graphic. And again, when we import that SVG graphic, all of the components of that graphic come in separately. So if I wanted to change maybe the colors on this factory from orange to blue or something like that, or you know, animate it, make it blink or something like that, we can do that to the individual components of that SVG graphic. Another nice thing about the SVG graphics is, especially compared to kind of the typical image that you may have imported previously, is that it really retains its resolution very well. So no matter how much you zoom in or zoom out, that resolution, that image quality basically stays the same compared to like a PNG or JPEG graphic that you may add, and sometimes it kind of loses that resolution a little bit. But basically we have this, you know, now we have this little faucet that we've brought in here with the water droplet that we can, you know, individually animate this water droplet and cause it to blink in our runtime here. So we have this water droplet that's blinking. Again, zoom in as much as we want, and the SVG graphics retain kind of that, you know, visual quality. You know, let's say you had an SVG graphic, maybe you didn't necessarily want to bring it in as separate components, but you still wanted to use it maybe as an image in your application. You can do that. Just when you click in the toolbar to embed an image, you can select an SVG file to embed it into that image, and it, you know, wouldn't come in as kind of the separate components. This one we can maybe kind of move through a little bit, but basically what we did for the lab is very similar to what we just saw kind of in the previous video, is importing an SVG, and then we wanted to make this needle in our SVG graphic move based on the level in our reactor. And so, you know, obviously we were able to individually select this needle. We were kind of changed the orientation of where we wanted that needle to pivot around. We were able to change the color of that needle to blue, tie it to our tags that we had already created, and then in runtime here, we're able to then see that needle kind of updating, you know, based on the tags that we have within our application. We also have our InTouch web client. So, you know, we looked earlier kind of at the introductory demo, and we're now able to access that same client within the web client as well. So those same screens that we saw within Window Viewer, we can view those within any browser. You know, what's nice about the InTouch web client is it's very, you know, it's very easy to configure. There's no IIS or RDS You know, there's no IIS web server or RDS that needs to be licensed for that. So, you know, very easy to configure. And again, we can bring in those same graphics, same dashboards. We can, you know, see the same alarming and trending information as part of our web client here. You know, the way that the web client is enabled is in the application manager. A couple tabs across the top where there's a web client tab. You can select the application that you want to make available in the web client. So then you just enable the web services for that. You know, one thing that you want to do is set the startup screen, so that way when you launch the web client, those windows are going to automatically pull up within the web client here. So we can kind of fast forward through this a little bit, but basically, you know, now we can launch that in our web client, see those same screens, you know, obviously within our browser here. We also have a new InTouch Unlimited license. So, you know, we have a couple of different offerings as part of InTouch Unlimited. You know, we have our InTouch Unlimited Standard, Professional. Within each of these offerings, this includes unlimited tags, unlimited clients, includes our communication drivers. AVEVA Historian is also included with the InTouch Unlimited license. You know, again, as we saw, now in our newer versions of InTouch, we can directly just check that box to enable storage from InTouch to the AVEVA Historian. And then AVEVA Reports is included in InTouch Unlimited as well. So, you know, this is a very, you know, no programming solution where you can kind of create reports. We have a library of graphics that are available to drag and drop and configure the screens that you want to see as part of those reports, and then you can you know, schedule those reports and send those out on a regular basis, or you know, on demand, and send those out to the right people. And then kind of the last thing here is InTouch is included as part of our AVEVA Operations Control Edge package licensing. And you know, within AVEVA Operations Control, as I'm sure you guys have heard a lot about today, is we have two kind of additions to that. We have our Supervisory Edition, and then we have our Edge Edition. InTouch is the key HMI SCADA offering within the AVEVA Operations Control Edge Edition. And you know, if we think about operations control and why we have this as an offering is, you know, there are multiple different solutions beyond just a HMI SCADA system that we have available to support frontline workers throughout their entire shift. So there are different capabilities that they may need. They're reporting, collaboration, cloud capabilities. And so within the operations control, we have our core HMI SCADA offering, as well as a set of common components that we make available to our customers. So as part of the Edge Edition, this includes InTouch and then AVEVA Edge, and then as part of Supervisory, it includes System Platform and Plant SCADA. And then I think I'm really early. Sorry, I kind of flew through that. But yeah, what questions do you guys have? All right, well, thank you so much. I'm sorry that it flew by. Oh, sorry.
When is that all going live, like the dark mode, which I particularly am excited for?
So that's available now.
Okay.
Yeah, I don't know if it's 2023 maybe is when it's available.
Okay.
Yeah. Yes. With the InTouch with the AVEVA Operations Control Edge, that's what you're asking about, to convert from factory talk. That's something I don't know, so maybe we can talk after, and I can get a little bit more information from you. Okay, perfect.
I have a quick one. So I'm assuming that InTouch still has the backward compatibility, like you can upgrade the older versions of InTouch.
Mm-hmm.
So let's assume that I had an older 2017 or 2014
Mhm.
If we get into this version, can that web client be still applicable? And will the graphics still be good enough to stretch? So I mean, I'm just trying to see if there is a redevelopment requirement, or will it just work with the web client as well?
Yeah, no, that's a good question. So there are a couple limitations with the graphics in the web client. I have a list. I think it's like 3 different kinds: ActiveX, .NET, WPF graphics. Those are not available. But I think, yeah, if it doesn't include any of those graphics and you're upgrading to the latest version of InTouch, you can still utilize that within the web client. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, because one of the biggest, I guess in the industry, what we usually see is the upgrades on InTouch with minimal changes to the application, and if that is the case, and they can still use the web client, I think it puts us in a better position to allow them the DMZ access instead of asking them to go after extending a gateway and multiple more layers of additions, because we now will have to create RDS setups, right?
Yeah.
So that's what I was curious about, if the web client will still work for those types.
Yeah, it will. Mm-hmm. All right, well, thanks so much for your time.